Anakin lands on Jedha, seeking answers to his dreams. He's instructed by Yoda himself to find the answers that he seeks as a Wayseeker. As he lands, a young monk with clouded eyes welcomes him, holding a staff while he murmurs, "I am one with the Force is with me. I am one with the Force is with me." The monk then turns his ears towards Anakin, and he swings his staff towards the Jedi, only inches from his face. "Who goes there?" Anakin looks at the young man, breathing heavily. "Oh, Master Anakin." The man lowers his staff. "We've been expecting you. I am Chirrut Imwe, one of the guardians of the Whills." They both stare at each other and shake hands. "This is where the fun begins, Master Skywalker," says Chirrut. And after that moment, Anakin begins his journey of deeper understanding into the Force. Have you ever wondered what it would have been like if Anakin had joined the Guardians of the Whills on Jedha? Well, if you have, then this is your lucky day, because that is exactly what we'll be exploring in today's video. So grab your nice warm bowl of Bantha Brew and let's dive right in to what if Anakin had joined the Guardians of the Whills. After Ahsoka departs from the Jedi Order, Anakin is frustrated. He sees that his apprentice is gone, and that she had seen a lot of the same flaws in the Jedi as he had. However, Anakin had decided to stick it out. Anakin tries to talk to some of the other council members about how he feels in this situation, but a lot of the time he is simply brushed off. "Anakin, you have to let your apprentice go. What happened wasn't your fault." Obi-Wan tries to console him in private one day. Anakin shakes his head. "I know, Master, but I can't help but thinking that if I had been there for her, if I had done more, she might have stayed. And I'm starting to see, too, that... Oh, never mind. You wouldn't understand. You're one of the council members. I don't expect you to get it," Anakin says. Obi-Wan looks at him. "Anakin, I'm not here as a council member. I'm here as your former master and your friend, your brother." Obi-Wan touches Anakin on the shoulder to console him. "I'm here to listen, Anakin." Anakin closes his eyes. "Obi-Wan, I'm seeing more and more that's wrong with the Jedi Order. I'm becoming more frustrated with their dogma, and I can't stand the impersonal and robotic nature of the Council," Anakin says. "I have feelings, and I can't just repress them like they're always wanting me to. In this case, with Ahsoka, it showed me that they want to play politics more than they care about their own members." He looks at Obi-Wan with a small tear forming in his eye. "I just don't know if I can be part of an organization that does that," he says. Obi-Wan looks back at him. He looks into Anakin's soul, sensing his pain with the Force. Obi-Wan then remembers something, and he recommends to Anakin a unique course of action. "Anakin, I'm recommending this as your friend. I believe that you should become a Wayseeker." Anakin looks at him and cocks his head. "A Wayseeker, Obi-Wan? You mean like the people in the High Republic did?" Obi-Wan nods his head. "Yes, Anakin, it's far more rare now, but I believe that it will help you find your way. You should go out there and request to the Council that you become a Wayseeker. That way, you can learn more about yourself and not have to worry about this insane Jedi stuff that's bogging you down." Anakin looks at Obi-Wan. He nods. "I believe that this is a prudent course of action, Master," he says. "Thank you for your advice. I'll think about it. I'll meditate on this." Anakin goes back to his private chambers and meditates on this possible course of action. He thinks long and hard, believing that this could actually be something that would build him up. He'd been so distracted lately by the war, by Padme, by the dogma of the Jedi that he had kind of lost himself. Anakin needed a breather, a reset, a spiritual engagement with the Force where he could just relax. So, after a long time meditating and doing research on the various temples across the galaxy, Anakin makes his case to the Council. After a few weeks of perusing the archives, learning more about Wayseekers and what they had requested to do rather than spend time on Coruscant, Anakin goes to the Council. "A request for us you have?" Yoda asks. Anakin nods. "Master Yoda, I've been feeling out of myself lately. My place in the Force, it just doesn't seem right, and I've been feeling a lot of tension within my soul. I believe that a lot of this is because of the war, and because of my personal feelings about what happened with my apprentice. Master Yoda, I am requesting permission to become a Wayseeker." The council takes a gasp. A Wayseeker during this time? Wartime, Mace Windu says to him. Anakin looks at him. I fear that I won't be a Jedi much longer if I don't take this course of action. Anakin replies. Master Windu strokes his chin. Obi-Wan looks at Anakin with a smile on his face. Yoda can sense Anakin's deep sense of urgency and his desire to learn more about the Force. He knows that deep in his soul, Anakin needs to find himself and that he feels discontent with everything that's going on in the galaxy right now. In addition, Yoda believes that if Anakin continues down this course and the Jedi do not grant Anakin the chance to find himself, that he will only continue to slide deeper into his depression. So, Yoda looks at Anakin.
Skywalker, believe in you, I do. Become a Wayseeker, you should. At which temple? Study would you?
Yoda asks. Anakin looks at Yoda. Jedha, Master, he says. I believe that the diverse history of Force users there, along with the Kyber Temple and the Guardian of the Whills, would allow me to truly find myself in the Force, Anakin says. I want to meditate there, I want to learn their ways, and I want to come back with a renewed perspective on the light side. Yoda looks at him, stunned. But he abides by Anakin's wishes.
Grant you this trip, I do. As long as you need, you should take,
Yoda says. Anakin bows, thanking the Master for his decision. Thank you, Master, he says.
Inform Jedha, we will, Yoda says. Guardians of the Whills, notified they will be. About your arrival,
Yoda continues. Anakin once again bows to the Grand Master and thanks the Council for their affirmation. He then steps outside, ready to just take a breather. Thankfully, the Jedi had abided by his wishes. And now, Anakin would have the chance to learn and understand a new aspect of the Force. The next day, as Anakin is loading up his Jedi Starfighter with the minimum amount of equipment he needs, he sees Obi-Wan coming towards him. Immediately, without even thinking about it, he goes and embraces his master. Thank you, Obi-Wan, for all your teaching and your guidance, he says. Without you, I may have fallen on a very, very dark path. Obi-Wan smiles as he embraces his brother back. Anakin, you've taught me so much about the Force and about being a master. I have no doubt that this journey will make you a far greater Jedi than I could ever be, he says. May the Force be with you, Anakin. Anakin looks back and smiles. And also with you, Obi-Wan. Anakin then gets in his little yellow fighter with R2-D2 and flies off to Jedha, ready to start his new journey into the ways of the Force. When Anakin arrives on Jedha, he immediately lands outside the Temple of Kyber, and he waits for the Guardians of the Whills to come and greet him. He doesn't know how long he's going to stay, but he doesn't plan on doing it for long. Anakin knows that he needs this brief reset period to really engage with the Force. However, he also wants to get back to the war. He wants to be with his soldiers, his men, and his wife. When Anakin gets there, he's greeted by a young Chirrut Imwe, alongside his old friend Baze.
Ah, Master Skywalker, you're the one that we've been waiting for,
Chirrut says. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me, he continues. Anakin smiles. I'm not familiar with that greeting, but thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me into your community. Anakin looks around. It's a crazy-looking temple, and he is absolutely enamored with it. Anakin thinks that this is a place that he's going to learn more, and he looks forward to it. Now, Skywalker, you're a Jedi. Let me test your skills. Chirrut pulls out his bow staff, and he points it towards Anakin. A duel, Skywalker? He says. Anakin is shocked. We've barely even met, he says. Chirrut smiles. I know, but you should have the advantage. I'm blind, after all. Then Anakin notices that Chirrut's eyes are cloudy, and he smiles, thinking that this will be an easy challenge for him. Clearly that this was an acolyte of the Force who didn't have very much skill. Anakin pulls out his lightsaber, prepared to duel, and he charges towards Chirrut. But Chirrut ends up parrying him and smacking his wrist with ease. Anakin opens his hand, dropping his saber and crying out, and Chirrut picks it up before putting it behind his back and throwing his staff away. Perhaps the Jedi didn't teach you everything, he says. The two engage in hand-to-hand combat, and the young master is incredibly adept in this field. He throws punches faster than Anakin's ever really seen before, and Anakin can barely block them. He doesn't have time to respond to Chirrut, who also ends up parrying his strikes and blocking them with perfection, before finally punching Anakin directly in the gut, making him keel over. Chirrut then picks up his staff and points it towards Anakin's face. It appears that you don't know everything about the Force. Yet, he says, smiling. Anakin realizes that once again, in his arrogance, he had underestimated an opponent. He had seen Chirrut, seen his eyes, and thought that he was going to be an easy target. However, it was clear that this was not the case, and that Chirrut had a mastery of the Force unlike anything he'd ever seen in the Jedi Order. While they focused on hand-to-hand combat, their focus was more on lightsaber combat and mastery of the self. Hand-to-hand combat was an afterthought most of the time, but Anakin still had learned it. However, Chirrut had learned it better. That's when Baze laughs outside the gates.
Seen this before,
he says.
And yet you still don't believe in every aspect of the Force that I do,
Chirrut says, smiling at Baze.
Baze looks back. You're good at martial arts, what can I say? He replies. That's about all. I know you've mastered the art and you have acute senses, but I can't get behind the idea that there's just this big, powerful Force everywhere.
Anakin smiles. Well, perhaps I'll change that for you, Baze, he says. Baze smiles.
Even if you can, I don't know if you'll be able to make me believe in it like Chirrut does. He's got a lot of different ideas, a lot of crazy ones, and I'm sure that you'll have a lot of fun talking with him at this temple.
Anakin smiles. I can't wait, he says. Together, they walk inside, and Anakin knows that this is exactly where he needs to be in this moment. When Anakin arrives in his quarters for the night, he discovers a small, very minimalist room with one bed, one mirror, and a couple of objects for toiletries and maintaining his physical appearance and hygiene. Anakin does what he does almost every night and calls Padme, telling her about the day and how he believed that this was the moment that he needed to be in now. Finally, he had found people who were passionate about the Force and not tied to the entire Jedi dogma that he had been exposed to for his whole life. Finally, he had found a new perspective. Padme is incredibly happy as she sees that her husband is more satisfied than he has been in a very long time, and she looks forward to hearing more about his adventures. As Anakin falls asleep, he looks forward to the next day. As Anakin is meditating before bed, he can actually feel the Force in a way that he can't on Coruscant because of the Jedi's views and their clouded vision that doesn't allow them to see beyond their own temple. Anakin feels it flowing through him in a way that he couldn't while he was surrounded by that dogmatic political Jedi Order. He even begins to hear the voices of the Whills themselves in his head, hearing them, listening to them as they sing and tell him certain things about the universe. Then he sees a vision of the galaxy consumed in fire. In that instant, Anakin jumps out of his meditation in shock, panting heavily, and he realizes that this is exactly where he needed to be. Perhaps the Force would continue speaking to him in this way. Maybe, just maybe, because he was here on Jedha, away from all of the distractions of the Order, he could actually get a clear picture of what was going on behind the scenes. When Anakin wakes up the next day and performs his morning ablutions, he goes outside and sees Chirrut in the courtyard practicing with his bow staff and his forms. Anakin watches him, seeing the expertise of the blind master, and he believes that this is a respectable man who truly knows what he's doing. So, you gonna challenge me with those moves for a second day in a row? Anakin asks, smirking at Chirrut. Chirrut laughs. Oh, Skywalker, I know that I would crush you 2 days in a row. No, it wouldn't be a challenge for me. However, I do want to show you a few more of our ways and help you to understand a side of the Force that perhaps the Jedi never showed you. Anakin nods. All right, Chirrut, I'll join you. So, Anakin hops down into the square where Chirrut is training and begins to learn from the young master. Chirrut starts to show Anakin some new things that he hadn't learned before. He throws his bow staff aside and tells Anakin that they are going to learn something different today. Skywalker, what you need in your life are some hand-to-hand forms, Chirrut says. You need to learn how to feel the Force flowing through you better, to connect with it, to embrace it in your body. and I believe that you would connect well with these old, ancient Jedi ways that were lost by the art of the lightsaber. In the days of the High Republic, the Jedi were wary of drawing their sabers. Instead, they would use many hand-to-hand forms, but now, it seems like they draw their sabers willy-nilly. Chirrut continues, I've seen hollows of the war, and I've seen interviews with certain masters after the battles. I believe that a return to the old ways would be, Chirrut pauses, preferable to the ideas that they have now. However, that's just me. I think you would be very interested in learning about some of the ways that I learned when I was younger. Anakin smiles. Any new perspective is welcome, he continues. At first, when Anakin begins training with Chirrut, it's different than the hand-to-hand combat that he had practiced in the past. This was something more real. He could feel the Force flowing through him, and Anakin struggled to understand what was truly going on. Chirrut smiles. Oh, you're struggling, Skywalker. Come on. I learned this with both eyes closed, he says, laughing. Anakin smirks back. Well, you're blind, Chirrut, he says. Chirrut also smiles. Exactly, young Skywalker, he continues. As they're training and as Anakin is becoming more and more adept with the hand-to-hand forms, Baze comes over and watches. I'd rather just use my blaster to deal with problems, he says. This whole Force thing, I'm a guardian of the temple. I believe in their mission, but, it seems weird to me, Chirrut, he continues. Chirrut smiles. Well, you clearly have never met a Jedi before then, have you, Baze? He says. Anakin looks at Baze, and Baze looks back at him. Not until yesterday, he continues. Personally, I still think a blaster is a much more effective way to deal with intruders. Chirrut smiles. Perhaps, but you are missing an entirely new perspective on the Force when you simply think about your reliance on technology, he continues. Baze smiles. Yeah, but it sure is easier to blast the bad guys than it is to do Force Fu or whatever this is. At the end of the day, after Anakin had been refining his hand-to-hand skills for the entirety of the day and was tired, he eats dinner with Chirrut, a nice big bowl of bantha stew, and then meditates with him. Once again, Anakin can see the Force. He can feel it flowing through him in a way that he couldn't on Coruscant, and he knows that this was the place that he needs to be. Anakin continues to see things in his meditation, and he watches as a masked madman plunges the Sith and the galaxy into chaos. He then sees himself commanding armies of clones trying to hunt down Jedi, and he says no. No, I will never do that, he says in his head. But there he is, leading the 501st to the Jedi Temple to slaughter younglings. And he can't handle it. Then, at the end of his vision, he sees the face of the Master behind everything. The hood is revealed, and the evil Sith cackle follows. It's Darth Sidious, who is also known as Chancellor Palpatine. In that moment, Anakin startles back to reality, and he immediately tells Chirrut about what he had seen. Chirrut looks back at him, feeling his emotions. Then he bolts back to his room quickly. I need to tell Padme. I need to tell somebody, he says. The government needs to know. Chirrut nods, acknowledging Anakin's perception. Very good, Sky. Without his lightsaber, and he learns the Force Fu that Chirrut had beat him with on that first day. Not only does he practice forms with Chirrut, but he also learns many new combinations in hand-to-hand combat while sparring lightly with him. Beyond that, Anakin starts to learn of many powers that he didn't even know that the Jedi could have. He starts to work on the power of Force illusion, one that Chirrut doesn't know himself, but that he says will be able to make Anakin much more powerful. The art of replicating himself into many copies so that the opponent would be confused. The power won't work on me, Skywalker, he says, because I'm blind. But Anakin smiles, saying that he knows it's going to work on many other people in the future. I think that Baze might have a tough time countering that one with his gun, Chirrut says. Baze looks back at him. I'd just blast all the copies and see what happens, Baze says. Anakin smiles. That's a good solution, I'd say. But personally, I like this power. Anakin finishes. Anakin starts to learn how to solve his problems without pulling out his lightsaber, something that many of the Jedi had lost as the war had begun. He also starts to learn something very interesting, and he learns how to add force powers to kicks. Not only when he strikes with his fists, but also when he has a massive kick. One day, when he is sparring with Chirrut, after many weeks of training, he actually ends up throwing a beautiful force-imbued tornado kick and hitting Chirrut right upside the jaw, causing him to stumble backwards and fall over onto his back. Anakin smiles. Sorry, Chirrut. That one might have been a little bit too hard for you, he says. Chirrut looks back at him, nodding. No such thing as too hard for me, Chirrut says. What a masterful kick that was. I am impressed, Anakin. After this moment, Anakin continues to train with this specific kick, learning how to make it quicker and more powerful while imbuing the physical ability that Anakin has with the Force. That night, Anakin calls Padme and tells her about what has happened. She's elated. Oh, Anakin, I'm so proud of you, she says. Well done. Anakin smiles. Thank you, Padme. I appreciate it. Then Padme proceeds to tell him about what had been going on in the Senate. Anakin, it's crazy. We went forward with the stuff based off of your visions, and I had told the Senate that I didn't trust Palpatine, and that I trusted that he was actually doing some shady stuff behind the scenes. With the charisma of Mon Mothma and the influence of Senator Organa, I was able to get a lot of people onto my side, and we actually got enough senators and members of the Security Council to execute Order 65. We removed Palpatine from office, Padme says. Anakin smiles. Well done. I'm so happy. That's fantastic. The threat of the Sith is gone, right? Padme smiles. Absolutely, she says. We're doing what we can for the galaxy, and hopefully this war doesn't continue to drag on. Also, I heard that the Jedi have been preparing internally for what you told me about, with regards to the clones attacking the Jedi Temple thing. They're getting ready, and they're preparing themselves for an attack. They also told their clone soldiers about this, and the clones are getting ready themselves. Rex was actually one of the members of the 501st who listened to what Fives had to say a little while ago about something weird to do with inhibitor chips. I know you wouldn't know anything about that because you're not around right now, but he told them that they should remove theirs, especially after your vision, and they listened, Anakin. They listened. Anakin smiles. Good to hear, Padme. It sounds like everything's going well for you. I look forward to hearing what happens in the future, he says. Padme looks at him deep in the eyes. I miss you, Anakin. Anakin smiles. I miss you too, Padme. I'll be back soon. Padme signs off, and Anakin goes to sleep. The next day, Anakin wakes up to the temple being in a frenzy. He hears blaster fire, and he hears shots from outside of the gates. He sprints outside to see what's going on and realizes that a gang of pirates was there to raid the Kyber crystals. This happens all the time, Chirrut says. People want to come and steal our natural resources, but we protect the Kyber. It's our job. Anakin goes in to fight, and he is surprised to see that he recognizes the one who is leading the attack. It's his old friend Hondo Ohnaka leading these pirates to their plunder. Anakin uses his new abilities on them, but first he tries to reason with Hondo. Hondo, old friend, Anakin says. Skywalker, Hondo says back to him. What are you doing on a planet like this? He waves for his men to stop fighting. Anakin looks at Hondo again. I'm on a journey, learning more about the Force, Anakin says. And what about you? Why have you come here with your guns and violence? Hondo smiles back at him. Well, you know me, Skywalker. I'm always in the mood for a good profit. And this is what I call profit. Kyber is so valuable on the black market, Hondo says. Anakin shakes his head. I'm afraid that I can't allow you to come here and steal these people's resources. Anakin replies, they're friends of the Jedi, and because of that, I will defend them with my life.
Hondo looks back at him. Oh, Skywalker, you can't just do me like that. I thought we were friends. Can't you give me a share of the Kyber? Anakin shakes his head. No, this is their sacred place. He looks towards Chirrut. Chirrut nods to him, sensing what Anakin's about to do next. Anakin smiles. I have to warn you, Hondo. My abilities have increased drastically since the last time we saw one another. I would recommend that you and your men leave immediately. Hondo looks back at him. It looks like we'll be on the opposite side of a firefight again then, won't it, Skywalker? He says. Boys, let's get her done. The first thing that Anakin does is he uses his Force illusion power to create multiple copies of himself with the Force, confusing the pirates. They all look around, trying to figure out which one is the real Anakin Skywalker. Then, out of nowhere, Anakin starts to use his insane new martial arts skills and his deadly Force kicks. He does a 540 Force hook kick on one of the pirates, knocking him to the ground. Hondo then sees Anakin, and he sees his powers, and he's scared. Many of the pirates begin to run, especially as Anakin uses this Force fu on them that Chirrut had taught him. And Chirrut also continues to defend the Kyber temple with ferocity. Come on, you guys can't even beat a blind guy, Chirrut says, looking around. Baze fires from the lookout tower, completely clearing a whole whackload of pirates from the fight. There are other members of the Order that come out to help as well, using their Force abilities and various weapons to counter the onslaught from the troops. Eventually, after being confused by Anakin's power and seeing that he is outmatched by many of the people inside of the temple, he ends up confronting Anakin. He offers a chance to negotiate, and Anakin has an idea. Hondo lays down his weapons, and his team surrenders to Skywalker, knowing that Anakin would give them a fair shot. Then he goes and asks Chirrut something. Chirrut, I have an idea. Would it be okay if we have these men work as mercenaries for us, in exchange for just a tiny fraction of the Kyber? Chirrut looks back at him, his eyes shot. What? You want to hire these pirates? The men that stole our resources and tried to plunder our temple? Chirrut says, slightly annoyed. However, Anakin knows that Chirrut is actually a very accepting member. What if they swear to become guardians? Then what? Anakin says. Chirrut looks at him. If they swear allegiance to our order, then yes, we can have them stay in our temple, and they can be mercenaries for us. But I refuse to give them any Kyber. Anakin nods. Okay, it's settled then. Anakin goes back to the pirates, and he tells them about what had happened. He tells them that he believes that they had behaved dishonorably, but that Chirrut and the other guardians of the Whills had agreed to accept them among their ranks if they were refusing to ever try and steal their Kyber again. There would still be lots of adventure, and Hondo would end up having many things to tell people about. Hondo, believing that this would be a good chance to get closer to the Kyber, says yes. I would love to learn more about these guardians of the Whills or Force or whatever they're called. Anakin, you are so hospitable. Thank you again, Hondo says. Anakin looks at his old friend. Don't screw this up. If you try to take any of that Kyber, you will be expelled, and I will never want to see your face again. Hondo looks back at Anakin. What? Have I ever betrayed you and let you down in the past? Hondo asks. Anakin scowls. Yes, many times, he says. Hondo looks back. Don't worry, Anakin. We'll be fine. I think that you guys have a good culture here. I wouldn't mind staying for a little bit with the boys, and learning a little bit more about what you do. Maybe there's a life after pirating after all, Hondo says. Anakin nods. Good. Well, then it's settled. We'll stay here, and you won't cause any trouble, Anakin replies. After the events of the day, Anakin anticipates sitting down to have a lovely conversation with Padme. However, in contrast to what happens normally, she calls him this evening in an absolute sweat. Anakin, I don't know how to say this. I don't know what's going on. Settle down. Padme, just breathe, relax. Anakin continues. Start from the beginning.
Padme tells Anakin about what had happened in the Senate that day, that when they had introduced the order to execute 65, Palpatine in turn had first executed Order 66 at the temple, and then he fled. The clones who hadn't removed their inhibitor chips had executed Order 66, but Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Mace Windu had led the Jedi against the clones, along with the ones who had removed their inhibitor chips and stood with the Republic, along with the Senate's choice to uphold Order 65. Anakin smiles, saying that he is grateful to hear that his Jedi stood the test of time and managed to continue to exist and fight back against Palpatine's tyrannical plans. Now, however, he worried about where Palpatine was headed. Honestly, Anakin, I don't know. He fled and took an unmarked ship. Nobody knows where he went. We're worried too, she says. Anakin nods, saying that he will continue to look for him in his visions. That night, Anakin falls asleep restless, hoping that the Republic could come to some sense of peace within itself. That night, Anakin has a tossing and turning sensation in his sleep, sensing a foreboding feeling. Darkness was coming. That night, a mysterious hooded man appears at the Kyber Temple. He requests entrance so that he can study the ways of the Order. Baze is on guard that night, as Chirrut, well, he couldn't see, and he says that he hadn't expected anyone to come at this hour. "It's far too late for someone to be arriving at our temple," Baze says. "Go, come back in the morning. We're not expecting anybody right now. And when you come next time, take off that darn hood," he says. The man doesn't take off his hood, and he doesn't leave either. Instead, he simply blasts a fiery barrage of force lightning at Baze, and the Guardian of the Will dies instantly. Anakin senses this disturbance and he hops out of bed, wondering what was going on. He senses Sidious, though, and he can feel that he's angry. This is like a presence he's never felt before. Darkness, evil, coalescing into one being. However, from his visions, he knows that this is Palpatine. He goes to the gate, ready to confront the Dark Master. "I know who you are," Anakin yells. "You're Palpatine. You betrayed me." Sidious smiles. "Anakin, I didn't betray you. You betrayed me. You went out and told everyone that I was a Sith Lord and trying to pervert the galaxy. I was a democratically elected official, and you and your meddling Jedi ways found a way to destroy me and bring me here. I knew that you were on Jedha. I remembered hearing the council discuss it. And I knew from my conversations with Padme that you were the one who told her about me. And you were the one who turned the galaxy against me. Anakin, even though you turned everyone against me, I know you're powerful. I know your potential. I want you to join me, and together we can rule No, Anakin says. I'm going to stop you right there, Sidious. You have no jurisdiction over me, and I'm not letting you go anywhere near me anymore. While the Jedi aren't perfect, they're certainly better than you. So be it, Palpatine says. In that moment, he fires another barrage of Force lightning at Anakin, but Anakin flips over top of him. Palpatine wields the dark side, but Anakin uses his new powers that he's learned as a Guardian of the Will, especially Force Illusion, which confuses Palpatine momentarily, but in an instant he senses the real Anakin and attempts to blast him again with his lightning. Anakin channels it into his own fists and fires it back at Palpatine before attempting to hit him with a blast of Force Judgment, a power that he had been working on again alongside of Chirrut. This impresses Palpatine, and he sees that he now has somebody he can fight that won't need a lightsaber, and can instead use simple mastery of the Force to counter his strikes. Anakin was looking like a Jedi from the High Republic, not one from now. Finally, at the end of their duel, Palpatine tries to blast Anakin with lightning, but Anakin, again, absorbs it, taking it all in, using his entire strength, and pushes it back towards Sidious. The Dark Lord cries out as he's incinerated by his own power. The Sith Lord was dead. Anakin breathes heavily, collapsing onto the ground after a battle hard fought. While he was powerful, it had expended a lot of energy. In that moment, Chirrut runs out in awe of Anakin, and he immediately takes him to the medical facilities within their temple. When Anakin wakes up, he sees Chirrut, who's standing over him. "Impressive, Skywalker. You defeated a Dark Master." Anakin nods. "Thank you for your teaching." He feels like he's learned a significant amount in his months at the monastery, and he thanks Chirrut for everything that he's done. "Thank you for avenging the death of Baze," Chirrut says, looking downcast, his face in a frown. "I never saw his face, but he always stood by me. He's one of my best friends, and even if he didn't always believe in the Order, he believed in me. Now his death is not in vain. His death was honorable." Anakin nods. "Yes, I'm honored to have known Baze, even if I only knew him for a few weeks. He's a man who carries a lot of respect, and he was standing by his convictions, and he stood by his loyalty to you, Chirrut." Chirrut nods. "Yes." Then, Anakin looks to the corner of the room and sees Padme. His eyes light up, and she embraces him immediately. "I missed you, Anakin," Padme says. "I missed you too, Padme," Anakin replies. Then, he senses two other presences. There's nobody else in the room, but something feels off. Anakin looks at her inquisitively. "Padme, why do I sense two other presences in the Force here?" Padme looks back at him and smiles. "I never got a chance to tell you before you left," she says. "Anakin, I'm pregnant." In that moment, Anakin is filled with joy and excitement, but also anxiety. "I'm going to be a father?" Anakin says. Padme nods. "Yes, Anakin, you are going to be a father." In that moment, Anakin knows that he has to go with Padme, and he has to train his kids in the Force. He's gained so much knowledge here, and he couldn't just go back to the Jedi after what he'd learned. He wanted to adopt the ways of the Guardians of the Whills, and he also wanted to include some of his own Jedi teachings in there. Anakin had gone outside the dogma of what was acceptable for the Force in terms of the Jedi doctrine. He goes back to Coruscant. Yoda meets him on the platform and eagerly thanks him for what he had done to stop Sidious.
Thanks to you, it is the dark side. No more, is it?"
Anakin smiles. "I appreciate it, Yoda, but I must thank the Force and the Whills. They were the ones who showed me that things were going on, and if I hadn't been in the presence of the Guardians, well, I never would have seen." Anakin then looks a little bit downcast.
"What troubles you, young Skywalker?"
Yoda asks. "Yoda, I'm going to have to leave the Order," he says.
Leave the Order, you say?
"Yes. I have a confession to make." Anakin then pours out his entire story about Padme and the kids. Yoda looks at him somberly.
Indeed. See your dilemma, I do. Raise the kids to be Jedi, we could,
Yoda says. Anakin shakes his head. "No, I want to train the kids, and I want to show them the ways of the Force that I've learned on Jedha." Yoda nods in understanding.
Your journey, life-changing, it clearly was. To have the courage to say what you did, incredible, it is. Respectable, it is. Respect you and admire you, I do, Skywalker.
Thank you, Yoda. Then, Anakin goes back to the temple and says his goodbyes to his other friends, like Obi-Wan, who had encouraged him to go on this journey. "Thank you for everything you've done, Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan looks back at Anakin. "Goodbye, old friends, and may the Force be with you," before he hugs him in a brotherly embrace. Anakin and Mace shake hands on good terms, giving each other a nod of respect. "We'll miss you around here, Skywalker," Mace Windu says. "I'll miss this place too, but I know my place now." Anakin then leaves, getting into his old Jedi Interceptor and going back to Naboo, ready to raise the kids with Padme Amidala. In terms of the Senate falls into the hands of Bail Organa after the war, who's elected after Mas Amedda calls for an emergency vote with the death of the Chancellor. And he's much more pacifistic than Palpatine. So, he ends up reaching an agreement with the Separatists, and at this point, because Anakin had departed for Jedha, Dooku is still alive. Dooku sees his aims as achieved, and so, the Jedi, the Republic, and the Separatists reach an agreement in which the Confederacy separates, and war is no longer required. Peace in the galaxy is reached, and Anakin returns to Naboo to focus more on his children and his relationship with the Force. He continues to meditate deeply away from the dogma of the Jedi and see new visions and hear the voices of the Whills in his mind. Anakin incorporates new teachings from the Guardians of the Whills and the Jedi into his daily life, and he remains in touch with Chirrut and Ahsoka as well. Both of them come to train the children sometimes, and they act as aunt and uncle figures to Luke and Leia as they continue to grow older. Anakin feels like a more well-rounded Force user, and now he truly finds peace being a family man and raising his kids to be exceptional Force users. Hey there folks, now's the time in our videos where we transition into the Ask Anything portion of the video, where I answer questions that are posed directly to me from people in the Discord server. Today's question is from NightGodYT, brackets MFN. If I had to choose one of my videos to live in, which would I pick and why? Now that is an absolutely spectacular question, and to be honest, I think that if I had to choose one to live in, it would either be what if the Galactic Empire won, or what if the Confederacy of Independent Systems gained separatism, because I believe that the one where the Empire won was just a unique take on the galaxy, and I think that it could have been something that would have happened if they had been able to confront the Vong. While it would have been a terrible galaxy to live in because of all of the Empire's tyrannical policies, it could have gotten better, especially if later on Thrawn were to become Emperor. I believe that Thrawn would have been a spectacular leader for the Empire, and that he could have created a society that was more stable, peaceful, and actually had a government that people could rally behind. In the original Legends books, he did create an empire that allowed regional autonomy so long as they provided conscripts to the Empire, raised their flag, and also paid their taxes. That is something that I think would have been a good system to maintain galactic security. And I really think that Thrawn, in Legends, had an astute political mind and he knew what he was doing. So if he had become Emperor in my What If the Empire Had Won video, I think that that would have been a solid ending. I also think that the What If the Confederacy Had Won video would have been a spectacular one as well, because that ending really kind of shaped the course of the galaxy into a new direction, and there were various factions that gained peace with one another at the end of the day, and things turned out well for everybody. And there'd be more freedom of choice on where you could live. If you didn't like the Republic anymore, okay, cool, I'll go to the Confederacy. You get tired of the Confederacy, well, I'll go back to the Republic. So I personally believe that those two videos would be the best ones to live in. If you'd like to see your questions answered, I would highly recommend joining the Discord server, where I interact frequently with the population inside the Discord server, and we have great discourses surrounding Star Wars and other things in life. I believe that we're building a great community, and I'd love to see you all there. Also, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please, I would recommend going and commenting down below what you liked, what you didn't like, and also whether or not you'd like to see a part 2. If so, what do you think would happen next? Thank you all for watching today's video, and as always, I hope that you have a bantatacular rest of your day, along with your daily delicious dose of Bantha Stew.